Hey everybody, welcome back and thanks for joining me. This is my recap video for UFC 232 that we saw last night on December 29th. Jones versus Gustafsson, Cyborg versus Nunes. Basically what we're going to do is just recap my predictions and analysis for the videos and see how we did. So let's start with the first one. I guess I'll say overall, we went 2 and 3 on the night. So kind of an off night for the predictions, but it was kind of a wild night of fights. First fight of the night, though, was out of the featherweight division, Chad Mendes versus Alexander Volkanovski. My prediction for that fight was Chad Mendes by unanimous decision. So what happened? Second round TKO by Alexander Volkanovski. So I got this one wrong. My analysis, though, was pretty accurate, I thought. Basically, what I said in my prediction video was that I thought Chad Mendes was a better wrestler. He was quicker, a little bit more crisp with his technique, and I thought that he would work his way towards a unanimous decision victory. I thought Alexander's pathway to victory was through power punches. And that's how he took him down. He took him down via power punches and, quite frankly, endurance. So that's where Chad fell off here, I thought, guys. He distinctively won the first round. Caught him with great combinations, got a takedown. He had a great first round. Chad Mendes dominated the wrestling throughout this fight. He had 6 takedowns. So I was accurate in that part of the analysis. He was quicker, but his endurance fell off, man. Chad's cardio in the second round, he hit a wall. I don't know what happened. And he hit a wall after dropping Alexander Volkanovski. So for the first 1.5 rounds of this fight, Chad was clearly winning the fight. And then he got caught with a couple of punches, a good combination by Alexander, and it just seemed like he hit a brick wall. He got tired, and it was almost kind of resembling of the Conor McGregor fight where he was winning that fight, and then his cardio just hit a wall, and it kind of looked like he gave up. In the Conor fight, he kind of dropped his hands, took 2 lefts from Conor, and was done. In this fight, he just took a couple of good combinations from Volkanovski, who I give all the credit to for continuing to come forward, even after getting dropped in the second round. Came forward, took it to Chad, and ended up getting the job done. So hats off to Alexander Volkanovski on that one. I'll try and do better with my predictions in the future, but not mad about it. I'll always cheer for a good fight over being right about a prediction. So that was a good fight. Alexander is now a contender in the featherweight division. Excited to see what he does moving forward now at 19-1 and on like a 16-fight win streak. So big things in the future for Volkanovski. Fight number 2. This one is where I was more wrong. Maybe the Nunes Cyborg fight I was the most wrong about, but Ilir Latifi, I thought, was winning by a first-round KO over Corey Overtime Anderson. Ilir almost got him in the first round. I thought I was kind of this close, maybe this close, to being spot on with that prediction. Ilir hit him with a big left hook in the first round and stunned Anderson, who's had issues in the past with his jaw, with his chin, I'll say. He's lost 3 out of his last 6 fights. 2 of those were by KO. Corey's had a difficult time in matchups against power punchers. And so I thought Ilir Latifi, being the better wrestler and the bigger power puncher, I thought he was going to win this fight. But Corey Anderson looked amazing. He didn't look like the type that was potentially going to be challenging like a Jon Jones for the title and maybe he's the future champ. Not like that, but he looked great. I mean, that was probably the best fight I've seen of Corey Anderson maybe ever, at least in a long time, because of the level of competition he was up against in Ilir Latifi. He performed very well. He took big shots from Ilir, but at least last night, his chin held up, and he kept taking it to Ilir. I said in my prediction video, I thought Corey's pathway to victory was by using his attributes and winning via decision, and that's exactly what we saw happen. He used his length, he used his size and his reach. He stuck behind his jab and, essentially outboxed Ilir to a decision. Ilir's wrestling didn't quite come into play in this match. Ilir was a two-time Swedish national wrestling champion, and he couldn't take Corey down. So I thought that was a great fight by Corey Anderson. He was the underdog in that fight. I picked Ilir to win that fight, and he ended up getting a unanimous decision at the end of the day. So hats off to Ilir. So the third fight of the night, Michael Chiesa versus Carlos Condit. I picked Chiesa via a third round submission, and it was Chiesa by a second round submission. So, one second. So Chiesa moving up a weight class, 155 to 170 for this fight. Taking on the natural born killer in my predictions video. The credit where I gave Carlos was on the feet, clearly, against somebody like Chiesa, who's a wrestler and a grappler. He likes to take you down and choke you out. I thought Carlos, being a very well-rounded fighter, I mentioned very similar to like a Donald Cerrone in that he's dangerous in all aspects of the fight. Going into last night, Carlos had 30 wins, 28 finishes, 15 KOs, 13 submissions. Very well-rounded guy, but I thought clearly against someone like Chiesa, he needed to beat him on his feet, which he looked okay on his feet. I mean, he didn't dominate Chiesa on the feet at all. There wasn't really much happening on the feet, to be honest with you. But Chiesa was able to take him down. And in the first round, Carlos was this close to finishing Chiesa twice. I don't want to say finishing, but he was attempting submissions in which Chiesa was clearly in trouble. So hats off to Carlos, being 34 years old. I mean, he's now on a 5-fight losing streak. But he went out there, he performed well. I hope his shoulder's okay. So it went from a Kimura and transitioned into, I don't even know what you call that. Chiesa took with his left arm, basically inverted and extended Carlos's shoulder, and me being someone who has had 2 prior shoulder surgeries, that kind of grossed me out to watch a little bit. After Carlos tapped and Chiesa got off, you saw Condit's arm sort of remain extended in that position as if he couldn't pull it back inward on his own. It seemed like something was damaged, but after the fight, he was able to stand in the middle while they raised Chiesa's arm. So I hope Carlos is okay, man, and it pains me to see UFC legends like Carlos, go out there and lose this many fights in a row. I mean, that guy's a killer. He's a legend, and he's clearly past his prime, so I hope he's not hurt. And as much as I love seeing Carlos Condit fight, I kind of hope he retires after that fight. But anyway, the spotlight here should be more on Chiesa. He looked great at 170. I don't want to say he's a threat. The top of the 170 class is stacked, but it's going to be really exciting to see what Chiesa does in this new weight class. I know after the fight he called out Neil Magny. I think that'd be a pretty good matchup. So hats off to Chiesa. He looked great at 170, took down a former interim champ in Carlos Condit. So congratulations, Chiesa. We'll see what you do moving forward. The fourth fight of the night, though. Amanda Nunes versus Cris Cyborg for the featherweight championship. Who saw that coming? Amanda Nunes by first round KO, or maybe they called it a TKO. 51 seconds it took her to finish Cris Cyborg. That was crazy. Oh my gosh. So I and many others out there, not everyone, but many others out there obviously thought Cris Cyborg was going to win that fight. She lost her professional debut way back in 2005 and has not lost since. She's had 18 finishes since then, or maybe 17. Sorry, guys, I'm rolling live here off the top of my head, just kind of speaking from the heart. So I don't have all my notes or statistics in front of me or anything like that. But Cris Cyborg, to date, has been the most dominant female that we've ever seen. I picked her to win, I believe it was by TKO in the 4th round. And thinking back on it, obviously seeing how it played out last night, but thinking back on it, I'm not too happy with that prediction, given the power and aggression that both of these girls possess and had going into this fight. I'm not sure why now, looking back on it, I thought that it would go 4 rounds. Maybe I thought Cris Cyborg would be winning the fight, and Nunez is a tough chick, and she'd be a tough out, and I thought maybe she'd last into those championship rounds, and then Cyborg would finish her just with pressure and overwhelming her with power and aggression. But boy, Cris Cyborg did not respect Amanda Nunes' boxing, her speed, her distance control, her timing, her accuracy. And that's in my prediction video. I said, do not overlook Amanda Nunes in this fight. Amanda Nunes is the best we've ever seen at 135, and she is long, and she knows how to use her reach, and she's got great timing and speed. I thought that was how she's been able to dominate the 135-pound division to date, is by using her length, her size, her speed, and her boxing. And so I thought, Cris Cyborg, do not overlook that. You can't underestimate what Amanda Nunes can do. And that's exactly what she did. Cris Cyborg didn't respect Amanda Nunes in that fight. She moved forward essentially with her hands down. She didn't walk forward with her hands down, but what she did was Cris Cyborg would throw maybe a 1 and a 2 and didn't worry about getting her hands back up to protect herself quick enough. And Amanda, she got caught with a left hook by Cyborg. Obviously, early on, the fight only lasted 51 seconds, but early on in the fight, maybe 15 seconds into it, 20 seconds into it, she got caught with a left, ate that punch very well, and was able to counter, and as I said in the prediction video, light her up like a Christmas tree. So that was just super exciting to watch. I'd be very interested in seeing a rematch. A lot of people, when a fight ends that quickly and that decisively, they'll say, that they don't deserve a rematch. Let Amanda face somebody else. She knocked her out in 51 seconds. Why does she have to fight her again? Well, it's because I think if Cyborg went in there with a smarter game plan, not walking forward, not getting her hands back to defend herself, I think that maybe that fight could turn out differently. But I think, to conclude, Amanda Nunes is now probably the greatest female fighter ever. If you knock out the greatest in 51 seconds, I think that's got to make you the greatest. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think, though. I want to hear about your predictions and what you thought of the fights. But specifically, if you wouldn't mind commenting below and just letting me know, is Amanda Nunes now the greatest female fighter that we've seen? And would you like to see an immediate rematch, Cris Cyborg versus Amanda Nunes? So, moving on to the main event of the night, Jon Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson. My prediction for this video, or for this fight, rather, was a 4th round TKO for Jon Jones. It was a 3rd round TKO for Jon Jones. So one of the 2 fights of the night that I actually got right. But like I said, a bad night of predictions. I thought a pretty good night of analysis and how I thought strengths and weaknesses would play out, but a bad night of the results of the fights and what I thought would happen. So anyway, Jon Jones, Alexander Gustafsson. Jon Jones looks great. If you watched my prediction video, you know that I was pulling hard for Alexander Gustafsson. I'm not going to sit here like I did in my predictions video and go off about how I dislike Jon Jones. because I still do. So I did that in the first video. In this video, I want to congratulate Jon Jones and congratulate Alexander Gustafsson for going out there and putting up a good fight. I mean, not nearly the level of back and forth or the type of great fight that we saw the first time they matched up 5 years ago. But Alexander went out there. He gave it a good shot. It's just that Jon Jones, steroids aside, really knows how to prepare for a fight. You know, I don't know what else to say. He really is a smart fighter. He knows, he can really study the tape and learn from his mistakes. And he kept his distance against Alexander. In the first fight, we saw most of the fight took place within Alexander's boxing range. And it was clearly where Alexander had the advantage over Jon Jones was in the boxing. And in this fight, we saw Jon Jones control the distance. He was in charge of where the fight took place last night. And he also was able to utilize his wrestling more than he did in the first fight. In the first fight, he attempted to take Alexander down a few times, but he wasn't able to. And we saw Alexander early on in this fight put up some good defense against Jon Jones' wrestling. But ultimately, in the third round, Jon Jones got him to the ground and beat him down. I don't know what else to say. You know, Jon Jones he's one of the greatest fighters. He's one of the greatest talents that we've ever seen in UFC history. You know, when I think of greatest fighters, I think of greatness and being the best as two totally different things. When I think of the greatest fighters of all time, I think that's all encompassing. I think that's your talent, your accomplishments, as well as your character. I think those three things play into who is the greatest fighter of all time. What you achieve in the octagon, how you achieve that in the octagon, and how you conduct yourself in and out of the octagon. I think those three things are sort of what makes the greatest fighter of all time. The best fighter of all time is, in my opinion, more so who is the most talented fighter ever. And accomplishments play into that, obviously, right? Because in order to be sort of the most talented fighter, you must have achieved, you must have gone to the peak of the mountain probably a few times. And so I think Jon Jones might be the best fighter of all time. Talent-wise, skill-wise, smart-wise, I think Jon Jones might be the best fighter of all time. But I can't give him the greatest just because of the steroid accusations. So anyway, guys, I'm gonna wrap up the video right now. 2 for 3 on the night. Not great predictions, great analysis, I thought. Up and down fight all night. I watched the fights with my girlfriend, who isn't normally all consumed by what I have on the TV when I'm watching these events. But last night, even my girlfriend couldn't keep her eyes off the screen. It was great fights. So hats off to Alexander Volkanovski, Corey Anderson. Who do we have next? Michael Chiesa over Carlos Condit, Amanda Nunes, and Jon Jones on the wins. They all looked great. Heck of a card, UFC 232. I appreciate you guys watching. I will be making a video for the upcoming UFC Fight Night, January 19th. Henry Cejudo versus TJ Dillashaw. We haven't talked about TJ Dillashaw much. He's one of those guys I love to hate, but absolutely respect as one of the best fighters in the world right now. So I really look forward to making a predictions video for UFC Fight Night, January 19th. I'm going to do that way in advance of January 19th. I made my predictions video for this fight only a day before. I put it out on YouTube on Friday when the fights were on Saturday night, and that was because of the holidays. I was in Ohio. I just didn't have time for it. I put a lot of effort into these videos. I do a lot of homework, a lot of research. I try and make good notes for it and give you guys good content. So I'm going to try and get this one out on YouTube like a week in advance of January 19th. So please tune in for that. Like and please subscribe to these videos so you know when I put them out there. And thank you.